Hey, it's Jessie from Squeegee Ink, and welcome back to Printer's Corner. This is where I answer the questions you've given me over social media in a little bit more detail. If you'd like your question answered like this, simply use hashtag Printer's Corner in a question in the comments or a direct message on social media, and I will answer in a future episode. This week's questions are about underbase, and one of them is about long print runs and what happens during a long print run. And also, can you screen print onto golf balls? Our first question is from Ellis Tvin, and they said, what is underbase for? An underbase is typically, it could be a couple of things. Sometimes it's to provide a flat, smooth surface for your overcolors, for your colourful artwork. Often though, it's more, say if you've got like a dark garment and you want vivid ink to go down on it and you want it to be nice and vibrant in an end print, you can't just put inks that are technically transparent. So say like you've got a fluorescent yellow, you can't just print a fluorescent yellow on black t-shirt garment because you'll kind of be able to see through the ink and it'll be like a muddy yellow. So what you typically do is print a white underbase and then overprint that with a fluorescent, and then the vibrancy of the yellow print should allow you to kind of like, you know, show the true color of the ink. There's actually lots of nuances to this, and when we went to Magna Colors, they are like an ink specialist. They actually said like they tend to actually put their underbase down as like a light grey, and that even reflects the pigment and the light and the ink even more vibrantly. So you don't have to go for white, but that tends to be what happens in screen print studios. So it's matting down, creating a smooth surface and making sure that colours that you put on top are as vibrant as you wanted them to be. Our second question is from Print Wizard. They said, hey Jessie, I was watching one of your older videos where you talked about long print runs, and I've noticed that during my longer print runs, especially with detailed designs, I get ink building up on the back of the screen. It starts messing with the print quality after a while. What am I doing wrong? And how can I stop this from happening? It sounds like it could be quite a few different things. So just take one at a time and see if that helps. The first thing I'd say is that you're probably not getting a gel cure on your ink as you go from color to color and you try and build up the design. So that just means like making sure it's under the flash for long enough so that the ink isn't being transported onto the next screen and then basically stamping on the next t-shirt that comes into contact with it. That'd be the first thing I'd look at. The second thing is it sounds like you're like smudging things. So if the screen is coming into contact with the shirt for too long, you're not depositing the ink in a really clean way with a nice sharp squeegee. You basically need to increase your off contact whilst making sure your squeegee is nice and sharp, so the ink just deposits really nice and sharp and doesn't smear onto the shirt. Because especially with detailed designs, you really need it to be very precise. Again, you can think about your squeegee angle being a little bit higher to deposit the ink more cleanly, especially with higher detailed things. There's so many variables, but go through one at a time. Another one to look at is maybe your mesh count isn't high enough, so you're depositing too much ink. Another one is that, say if it's building up over time and then you kind of sort things out and reset and then it doesn't happen, and then you get another 20 prints on and it's happened again. This can be because your platens aren't the same temperature, for example. Then you're letting them cool down and then you're not overheating the ink anymore, that type of thing. So keeping the heat of all the platens nice and consistent. And then finally, one of the most things that has tripped me up the most in the past is that the adhesive on the platen hasn't been consistent. So I'm getting all the other things right, and then the adhesive kind of wears down, and then my shirt might even be lifting and dropping very, very slightly. You'd hardly notice it by looking at it. And then that is actually distorting the image as it builds up with the complexity. So I'm afraid you just have to be on top of everything. But the first thing to look at is probably your off contact. Our final question this week is from Scott Lucas 52. And they said, I want to get into screen printing onto golf balls and lighters. Any knowledge about that? What screen mesh should I choose? I would do a hard pass on screen printing golf balls and lighters. I don't think screen print is the application for it at all. You can't really do it. You need to do something like pad printing, which has actually got a little element of screen printing in it, but it's basically where a sponge gets inked with a little screen, but the screen is over here. It's just transferring the image onto the sponge, and then it's just wrapping around this odd shaped object. So in this case, a golf ball, because you can't really get a screen to go around the circumference of the ball nicely or cleanly. So that's why pad printing was invented. I wouldn't worry about screen mesh. That's not the problem here. So look into pad printing. You'll see what I mean. And that might be a really good little sideline for your screen printing business if you want to get into producing merchandise for people, or otherwise just send it out and do a white label and say that your company did it, but you kind of organized it. I'd stick to screen printing for now if you're asking about screen meshes and golf balls. And to round up this week's main question, which is this a screen print job? The answer is typically yes, because screen print is very, very adaptable. But every now and again, if no one else is doing it with screen printing, it might be time to look into alternatives and save yourself a headache. For example, the pad printing option for things like merchandise, unusual plastics, anything like that. Anything that you can see in a factory that has a dedicated job role. For example, there's factories that just print on golf balls. There's probably a reason for it, because it's specialist, it's difficult, and it's not something you can bring into your standard screen print studio setup. However, screen printing is very adaptable, and it's probably the best one for printing on lots of different substrates. It can't be for everything. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Printers Corner. Make sure to get involved. Put little questions in the polls. Give me new questions for future episodes using hashtag Printers Corner. And also, it'd be great if you could subscribe, because a lot of the people that watch the videos aren't subscribers yet. And also, I hope you don't accidentally splash any chemical in your eyes this week, and have a great time printing.